Hey everyone, how's it going? So it's finally getting into British summer now. It's my second month learning Mandarin, and it's really nice being outside. You know, the sun's finally starting to shine, and the weather's been really good recently. And it's Saturday, so I'm generally in quite a good mood today. Just had a conversation with my friends Alex and Mo about what we've been doing so far in Mandarin. So I think that's another thing. Groups can be really useful. Anyway, so what do I want to talk about in today's video? The subject of today's video is everyone's favourite topic, grammar. So how do you learn grammar? When's the best time to learn grammar? Should you even bother learning grammar? Do you do drills? This is something I get asked quite a lot. Just in general, how do you learn grammar? Do you need to learn grammar? Stuff like that. So I'm going to go through my general take on it, and then you can feel free to agree or disagree in the comments below. So the first thing I do is to basically get an overview feel of the grammar. So like, what is the general structure of the language like? In Mandarin, it's not too much of an issue for me at the moment because it seems to be fairly close to Cantonese grammar. But nevertheless, the first thing I do when starting a language, I get a beginner's textbook and I go through one dialogue every day, really trying to focus on my listening comprehension. But the one thing I didn't talk about is, well, there's a lot more in the book than just dialogue. So what do I do with the rest of the stuff? Okay, so basically the first port of call is always the dialogue. That's what I do first. That's what I do in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I literally just leaf through the pages, have a read through, literally just once, find all the grammar explanations. The shorter and more concise, the better, and just kind of read them and just make myself aware of them, that these things exist. You don't have to master it, you don't have to learn it, it's just getting these things on the map, putting them in your head can really help, and then when you go back to your input later, you can start to notice them. So, the reason I like a beginner's textbook is because, one, they've got lots of short dialogues with basic content you can get quite good comprehension of quite early on and quite quickly, and also they provide you a general overstructure of all the different bits and pieces of the language. So that's why I like using textbooks. And if you can find something like, for example, I've used Teach Yourself in the past, that one was really, really good, because all the explanations were really concise and just in one section. So you can just read through that once, get a general idea of it, and then when you're either listening to that same dialogue again or listening to future dialogues, you can try to notice those structures in your input. So that's the first thing I do to get an overview. The second thing I like to do is I literally just go on YouTube and type in something like overview of Mandarin grammar, and then just find a few, 5-minute videos or even 10-minute videos and just watch them and kind of try to absorb what you can. And this, I think, is helpful to get a kind of a really high level overview of how the language works, and that can really help. So this is literally, I just typed in an overview of Chinese grammar, and this is one of the things that came up. It goes over the 5 different tenses in Chinese. So when I go back to my input later, I can start to notice these things. As I'm progressing through my textbook and I'm reading more short, concise explanations along with the dialogues, and I watch a few of these sorts of videos, I can start to get a really high-level, superficial understanding of what the grammar is like. So then I basically continue on, and this is probably the most important step, is to consume a lot of content. Lucky for people learning a language, the same thing to learn vocabulary you can do to learn grammar, intonation, flow, and all these things combined, and that's just do lots of listening and reading. Reading is probably better for grammar, listening is better for intonation, I'd say, but just get lots of input in the language, and this helps you get used to the structures. You'll see the same things over and over and over again until these most common aspects start to become normal. And then the more input you get, the more abstract and uncommon, the more you'll see more abstract and uncommon bits of grammar or vocabulary, and then you'll start to acquire those as well. So this is really the fundamental thing, I think, is you need to get a lot of exposure, and you need to see these things in action a lot of time in real context. And the fact that you've got an overview and a base before can really expedite this process of picking up the structures of a new language and make it a lot quicker. So then finally, the last thing I do is when you're getting a lot of input, obviously there'll be some things that weren't explained in your videos and some things that weren't explained in the textbook, and you might be wondering, okay, well, what's the difference between these two things? And this is when you literally just type the question you're thinking to yourself into Google, either find a very short article or a short video explaining this, and that can really help you get used to that structure. And then I think this is really powerful because you've been doing input, you've noticed something that you have a question about, and then when you look up that thing, you're learning the question you had yourself, you're learning something that you already have context for, and it can really help. And I think that's really one of the best ways to learn, because it's learning through your own direct experience and getting explanations to explain and understand what you're listening and reading to. So to give you an example for Mandarin, I saw in one of the beginners videos this character here can be put before the verb to indicate present continuous tense, and I've also seen in a different explanation this character here can be put after the verb to also indicate present continuous tense. So I was thinking to myself, okay, well, here are two things that at first glance seem to have exactly the same function. So what is the difference between these two? When do I use one and when do I use the other? So this is when I find Googling these things really helpful, and because it's a question and something I've already noticed in my input already, that these things do seem to appear to be used in slightly different contexts, but I just can't pin down what it is. So then, because I already have direct experience, I find that reading a short explanation like this, even a few paragraphs long, or watching a video, I find I can absorb the information a lot easier because I already have direct experience with this problem, with this question. So then I simply read it, maybe some of it makes sense, maybe some of it doesn't, that's fine, and then I go back to my input, and then hopefully through more exposure, these things, some of them will start to become clear, some of them won't. Maybe we'll get the same question again in 3 months' time, look up the same thing then again, and maybe it'll make more sense when I look up it the second time. So that's pretty much my approach to grammar. As you can probably guess, it's not rocket science. I don't think this is an exact science. It's not a case of I've been studying this for 1 year, therefore I'm going to require 80% of the grammar or anything like that. I really think it's hard to predict when you're going to learn these things, when they're going to make sense and when they're not. So I think the best piece of advice I'd have is just keep exposing yourself to the language. If you look up something at first and it doesn't make sense, that's fine, just ignore it and maybe try again a few months later looking up the same thing, and then maybe it would make sense then, because your brain is always figuring stuff out in the background, and the more direct experience you get and the more examples you see, these things make a lot more sense. So that's my take on grammar. Please let me know what you do. If you disagree or agree with anything that I've said, please leave me a comment. And thank you so much for watching this video and supporting this channel. If you like what you've seen, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That really does help me out. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.